o'clock on a Saturday, the regular crowd shuffles in. There's an old man sitting next to me, making love to his tonic and gin. Da-da-da-da-da-da-dee-da. I saw Billy Joel sing this in 1980, 31st of March it was. He was playing at Wembley and I got a train up to London. I didn't have a ticket, but what I did have was a ridiculous French accent that probably owed more to Kenny Everett than anything else, and a slightly flamboyant scarf. And I thought I looked like a French journalist, and on that basis I blagged my way in. I didn't have any credentials, but either they thought I was crazy or I really was a Frenchman. I don't know, but they let me in, and I sat in the press box all night. Different times, the impetuousness of youth. But here we are 45 years later and I'm still singing this song. It's a long song, but it's not very difficult. The challenge for us here really is to make sure that all the bits, most of which are very similar, just fall in the right place. We have intros and verses and interludes, and separately, la, 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 there's that bit. But everything else is this, with this descending bass line. So let's look at that straight away. We've got 8 verses, in fact. As I say, they're all exactly the same, and these 8 verses are in pairs. So if we can understand where the verses come and how everything jostles around those, we'll be good. We'll look at the verse, and then we'll look at the intro, which is just a variation of that, and the chorus, which is exactly the same as the verse, and then we can put the whole thing together. I've got a capo on the 5th fret. You don't need to do that. You could play this in C, that's the original key, but I'm playing as if in G and it comes out as C. That way, actually, all the chord shapes are really straightforward. The bass line, we can play that stepwise continuously. That's really nice. And there are no bar chords. So that's how I'm going to do that. Now, before we play through the verse, let's just look at the strumming pattern we're going to use. We've got 3 beats in the bar, and it just keeps going like that for pretty much 6 minutes. Boom, ching, ching, boom, ching, ching, boom, ching, ching, boom, ching, ching. So I'm going to play the bass note of each chord crisply with the thumb on the first beat, and then gently strum the upper strings. That kind of thing. Later, when we put the chords together, you'll see how important it is to bring that descending bass line out. That kind of a thing. But we need to loosen up the hand, otherwise that just sounds a bit pedestrian and a bit static. So just loosening up that strumming hand means we're going to just catch those strings as the thumb comes up again. Gives us a bit more detail and it's a bit more refined. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do throughout. You just need to keep an eye on where the bass note is. We've got a chord of G. Then I've got a chord of D over F sharp. I could play D, the whole D, and wrap my thumb round. Actually, I'm just going to do that much of it, just using my 2nd, 3rd and 4th fingers, which means the top string's open, but I'm probably not going to hear that, even though you might have on the screen this shape. I'm probably just going to do that. I just find that easier. It's a bit smoother. C with E in the bass. And we've gone down. Now we've got bum, bum. We want that note, but we've run out of guitar. So we're going to come up to the open 4th string for that. And that's G with D in the bass. Now I've got a C, standard C. G over B, so it's just a straight G chord, but with the 6th string missing. A7 in fact, and then D7. So slowly, the first 8 bars are this. And then we repeat almost that, but the end changes. We get this. That's the same, onto the C, but now we get D7, sus4, so like a standard D7, but I've got my little finger on the 3rd fret of the top string, back to G, and I've got 2 bars of G. That's the whole of the verse. 8 verses, they're all exactly the same. And the chorus, sing us a song, you're the piano, is also exactly the same as that. So let's just have one of the verses. It's 9 o'clock on a Saturday. The regular crowd shuffles in. There's an old man sitting next to me, making love to his tonic and gin. Verse and chorus done. Now the song actually begins with a little jazz piano flourish, which I'm not going to attempt. It's this. That kind of a thing. But we can play the chords on the guitar. That would be an A minor 7, like this, and then an A diminished 7. Open 5th string, and then 1 2 1 2 on the top 4 strings before the 3-beat stuff kicks off with the harmonica. And this stuff is really just the verse. And when we get to this G, we enter an extended section that's more of an interlude that we're going to see later on. But it's this: G for a bar, C over G for a bar, and I'm keeping my outer fingers where they are for a G chord, but my first and second fingers are playing as if they're forming a C chord there. And then those 2 fingers are going to move up 2 frets for what I'm calling D add 4 over F sharp. I'm only going to pick the 2nd, 3rd and 4th strings there, and then ba-da-da, which is a bass line coming down 3 2 1 on the 5th string, and I'm articulating that with a C, G over B, A minor 7, like that, 1 beat each. And then that repeats. It's 9 o'clock, and we're into the first verse. That G, C over G, just because I like that, I'm going to hammer that on. Strictly speaking, I should just go straight into the C over G, but it's just a bit more guitar-y. Okay, so that's the intro done and the first verse done, and then we get into the first interlude. Now here's the thing. There are 8 verses, and they're in pairs, 4 pairs. Verses 1 and 2, verses 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8. The interlude between verses 1 and 2 is longer, 10 bars, and the interlude between verses 3 and 4 is shorter, only 2 bars. That's worth knowing later on when we want to kind of navigate where we are. And the same is true for verses 5 and 6, that's longer, and then 7 and 8 is shorter. The longer interlude is kind of half a verse, and it's this. Okay, so just like the second half of the verse. Ding, down, down. 2 bars of G and then C over G, and then we're into the second verse. Another way to negotiate this, or to kind of orientate yourself, is that, at least in the way Billy Joel does this, he sings in a lower register. It's 9 o'clock on a Saturday in the first verse of each pair, and in the second verse of each pair he goes up. Son, can you play me a memory? I'm not really sure. And I probably can't do that. That's the same register for the chorus, of course. He goes up. I may not attempt that. But if you're singing the lower register, you know you're in the first of each pair of verses. Anyway, let me just give you the first verse plus that interlude into the second verse, and then I'll show you what happens between the 3rd and 4th verses, which is shorter. Here we go. It's 9 o'clock on a Saturday. The regular crowd shuffles in. There's an old man sitting next to me, making love to his tonic and gin. Da 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 dee da. Dee 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 to G for 2, C over G. He says, son, can you play me your memory? And we're into the second verse. However, if we were doing this for the 3rd and 4th verses, all we get is, after our 2 bars of G at the end, we get C over G for 2. Let me sing you the third verse. John at the bar is a friend of mine. He gets me my drinks for free. And he's quick with a joke and to light up your smoke, but there's some place that he'd rather be. C over G straight away. Will I believe this is killing me? And then we're into verse 4. So verses 5 and 6 follow the same rules as 1 and 2, and 7 and 8 are the same as verses 3 and 4. It's just that 2 bars of C over G. Okay, I hope that makes sense, but for me, that's the easiest way to negotiate that. Anyway, after verse 2, we get into the la, 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 la. So let's look at that now. Now this minor section, it's 12 bars long. The first 4 bars more or less repeat, and it's like this. La, da, da, da. I'm playing E minor for a bar, E minor over D, so it's just the top 4 strings open, to A7. And then you could keep playing A7 for the 4th bar. Nominally it's C for 2 and then D over F sharp for 1. But if you listen to the bass, la da ba ba da, is really what happens there. That's what I'm going to play. I'm just going to play E, G, F sharp, like that. Open 6th string, 3rd fret, 2nd fret. La ba da da, la da 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 da. The second 4 bars are the same, but I am just going to stay on the A7 then. And then la la da da da. What I'm doing there is playing a descending line from D, C, B, A. I'm playing a D, and then I'm just going to take my 2nd finger that's on the top string and place it on the 3rd fret of the 5th string. Down, down. I'm not too worried about catching that top string. I'm probably not going to play that. I'm going to move that finger down, 2nd finger down to the 2nd fret of the 5th string, and then I'm going to end up on a D7 with an A in the bass, or maybe a D, but D7 probably. Down, 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 down. That's really easy, isn't it? So, la, da, da, da. Sing us a song, you're the piano man. Sing us a song tonight. Well, we're all in the mood for a melody. You got us feeling alright. So that leads into the chorus, which of course is exactly the same as the verse. And now we've got another interlude, which is much like the one we had in the intro. You got us feeling alright. Ba da down, da do di down, ba di 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 G, C over G, D, dum bum bum bum. Now John at the bar, and we're into the 3rd verse. So those are all the bits, but it's probably worth just spending a moment looking at what goes where. We already know we have 8 verses. Verses 1 and 2 are joined with a longer interlude, verses 3 and 4 with a much shorter one. But what happens all in all is this intro, which ends with it's verse 1 with the interlude ending with C over G for 2 bars into verse 2, and that takes us into la da da da, da 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 da. Sing us a song. And now we get the first chorus. That first chorus ends with an interlude. All the choruses end with the same interlude. This interlude is just like the intro one. Second half of the verse into this stuff. Verse 3, John at the bar is a friend of mine. Verse 3 is joined to verse 4, just with those 2 bars of C over G. Then verse 4, and then again, la la da da da, da 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 da, da dee. go to another chorus here, but you don't. Now you go straight to verse 5. Paul is a real estate novelist. Again, we have the longer interlude, the 10-bar one that joins up to verse 6. And the waitress is practicing politics. There's a good reason I'm not singing this high. That takes us out into our la, 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 la again. But this time, it's the piano solo, and there's an extra 4 bars. So the first 4 bars of this, la, 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 just repeat. Otherwise, it's exactly the same as the previous times. Into the chorus. Okay, now we get into the chorus again. Now we get the usual interlude that's the same as the intro one that ends with. And we're into verses 7 and 8, and we're nearly there. Verses 7 and 8, as you know, are joined by that's 2 bars of C over G. Okay, that's that. After 8, la 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 la, la da 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 dee, into the final chorus. The final chorus leads us into the interlude that it always goes into. Slows down to end on a big old G chord, and that's everything. All right, well, look, thanks for watching. I hope that worked. All that stuff, what goes where, may be a bit confusing. Buy my sheet music. It's beautifully laid out and hopefully all correct and should match the original recording exactly. Yeah, thanks for watching, and hopefully see you on the next one. There's an old man sitting next to me, making love to his tonic and gin. He says, son, can you play me a memory? I'm not really sure how it goes, but it's sad and it's sweet, and I knew it complete when I wore a younger man's clothes. Oh, la 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 la, la da 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 da. Sing us a song, you're the piano man. Sing us a song tonight. Well, we're all in the mood for a melody. You got us feeling alright. Da 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 da. Now John at the bar is a friend of mine. He gets me my drinks for free, and he's quick with a joke and to light up your smoke. But there's some place that he'd rather be. Says, Bill, I believe this is killing me, as a smile ran away from his face. Well, I'm sure that I could be a movie star if I could get out of this place. Oh, la, la, da, da, da. Novelist who never had time for a wife. wife. He's talking with Davy, who's still in the Navy, probably will be for life. The waitress is practicing politics as the businessmen slowly get stoned. Yeah, they're sharing a drink they call loneliness, but it's better than drinking alone. Sing us a song, you're the piano man. Sing us a song tonight. Well, we're all in the mood for a melody, and you got us feeling alright. It's a pretty good crowd for a Saturday, and the manager gives me a smile, 'cause he knows that it's me they've been coming to see, to forget about life for a while. And the piano, it sounds like a carnival, and the microphone smells like a beer, and they sit at the bar